Good evening, everyone. Welcome to our Global Competence Training Part 1. The title of this evening's training module is Identifying Areas of Self-Growth. First, before we get started, I did want to wish everyone a happy International Education Week for 2016. This week, November 14th through the 18th, is International Education Week. I recommend, if you're interested in engaging through social media, you can do that through hashtag IEW16 on Facebook, Twitter, or any other social media platform you would like to use. You can also just Google International Education Week to find an event that's close to you. There is a national calendar of International Education Week events. Also, I would like to just give a quick shout out as part of International Education Week this week on Thursdays every week at 8 o'clock. Eastern Standard Time, we do have the Global Ed Chat on Twitter, and Peace Corps, along with the Department of Education, is hosting for International Education Week. So I did want to give a shout out. So in addition to launching our training this evening, we also have the hashtag Global Ed Chat going on tomorrow evening, so please join us. Before we get started, I wanted to give a little bit of background about the program at Peace Corps that is sponsoring this training so that all of you can understand and we're all on the same page. And if you have any questions about that, please feel free to pose any questions. Also, at any point during the conversation, if you have any questions or you can't hear or there's something that you need clarified, please feel free to pose those questions or comments via the chat. You should have received directions on how to join the chat via email earlier today and also yesterday, but you do have to sign in typically to or create a Google account if you want to participate in the chat. If you would rather not sign into Google, you can also email your questions to us and there should be directions there in the chat box, or you can tweet them to hashtag WorldWiseTalks, which is the hashtag that we use for all of our online and virtual trainings and events. So before we get started, I wanted to give a little bit of background on the WorldWise Schools program at Peace Corps. The WorldWise Schools program was started in 1989 as an intercultural exchange program. And we offer 3 programs to educators in the US. And just to clarify, we use the word educator broadly. When we say educator, we mean Girl Scout troop leader, after school program leader, homeschoolers. We use that term very, very broadly. So when I say educators, I am using all of those people as all-encompassing, and we mean K-20 educators, not just K-12 educators. So we offer 2 programs. The Correspondence Match program connects currently serving Peace Corps volunteers with educators in the United States for intercultural exchanges. Since 1989, we have facilitated hundreds of thousands of exchanges between classrooms and our over 140 countries of service. We also offer the Speakers Match program, which connects returned Peace Corps volunteers to classrooms in the United States. We also send returned Peace Corps volunteers to retirement communities, Girl Scout troops for any number of different events or opportunities. So if you're interested, you can look at our website. The last resource that we offer to educators in the United States is resources. So we offer events, trainings, and hundreds of lesson plans on global issues that you can use to develop your students' global competence. And I have offered the website here, peacecorps.gov/educators. Peace Corps just launched a new website, and we've worked very, very hard to update all of our resources so that they really are useful to educators who are interested in bringing global issues into their classrooms. So please visit our website if you're interested in learning more. So there's a screenshot of our website, and you can see all of it says educator resources, speakers match, and correspondence match. That's what our website looks like if you would like to come and visit and learn more about our programs, which I hope you do. I'm going to briefly go over our training design. We've had a lot of questions that were emailed to us, and I'm thrilled about that. But I did want to answer some of those questions up front so that anyone who is interested in doing our training for this academic year, you can understand a little bit more about the training design. First of all, our training is self-paced. We do have the live webinar components, but if you are not able to watch the webinar at the time that it's scheduled, you are welcome to go back and watch the recording. Every training module has a page on our website. You can go to our educator resource page and just Google, or just search, not Google, pardon me, Global Competence, and all of the different training modules will pop up, and the Recorded webinars will be there for you to watch at your own pace. Also, there are assignments that are an option if you would like to do them, and mostly they are designed to give you an opportunity to reflect on your own global competence development as an educator. So if you want to do the assignments, you can, and you can submit them at any time. Again, our training is completely virtual. You can participate in person. You can come and you can ask questions, and you can watch the webinar as it's being presented, or you can go back again and watch it recorded. There are 4 modules that we will be presenting throughout the year. We launched our first one during International Education Week. And if you complete all 4 modules and do all of the assignments associated, Peace Corps will issue you a certificate. And if you are interested in getting continuing education units, we will also write you a letter to support that. If you are able to get approval for CEUs. We also welcome anyone who just wants to watch our webinars, to participate, to do the assignments. You don't have to get the CEUs or the certificate or do any of the associated work. It's completely on your own time, and if you are interested in the certification or CEU component, we welcome you to join us for those pieces. And last again, it's a standalone. You can watch one webinar if it's a topic of interest, or you can do all of it for the full training for a certificate. Again, please use the chat right now or our Twitter feed to pose any questions that you might have about anything that I have covered. Again, we will get, I apologize, don't go to the Q&A, you can definitely do that now about the training. We will also be offering a Q&A a little bit later. So without any further ado, I've already talked way too much. I would like to introduce our main speaker for the evening. This evening we are joined by Dr. April Maddox-Foster. And April, if you could just wave and say hi to everyone.
Hello.
Thank you so much for joining us this evening. So April Maddox-Foster, PhD, is an assistant professor of teaching culturally and linguistically diverse and exceptional learners in the College of Education and Human Development at George Mason University. Dr. Maddox-Foster received her PhD in Language, Literacy, and Culture from the University of Pittsburgh, her MAT in Elementary Education and Secondary Social Studies Education from Chatham University. Is that correct, Chatham? Is that how you pronounce it?
Yes.
Okay, good. Her MA in International Affairs from the University of Pittsburgh, and her BA in History and Political Science from St. Francis University. She's a very accomplished educator and professional, so we are really thrilled to have her here with us this evening. She has taught middle and elementary schools in the US and at the Ellis School in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, the Golden Door Charter School in Jersey City, New Jersey, excuse me. She also has taught elementary school internationally at the Anglo-American School of Moscow, Russia, and the International School of Amsterdam in the Netherlands. Dr. Maddox-Foster currently serves as the co-editor of Focus on Elementary and Activities in the Classroom for the Association of Childhood Education International, which does some really great work on helping to develop teachers' global competence. And she routinely presents at national and international conferences on the issues of internationalization of education and intercultural competence and development. Dr. Maddox-Foster serves as the program lead for the university's International Baccalaureate Certificate program, and she teaches courses in international education, child development, literacy, social studies, and educational research. Again, we are thrilled to have Dr. Maddox-Foster with us this evening. Thank you so much. And without any further ado, I'm going to turn it over to her. At any point, you can submit, you can see the slide up if you have any questions for her, and we will get to questions after her presentation. All right, I'm going to turn it over to you. Thank you again.
All right, thank you so much. So let me do my screen share here for a moment.
Thank you so much. Okay. Looks great. Perfect.
Okay, fantastic. So Caitlin invited me to speak with you all this evening on global competence and kind of the first setting the stage, so thinking about ourselves in terms of global competence. And I'm really excited to talk with you tonight, and I look forward to your questions at the end of this. So let's go ahead and get underway. So I'm going to kind of focus my presentation tonight on 3 different things. The first is kind of defining what global competence is. The second is thinking about 21st century learning in the context of global competence. And then finally, developing global competence and intercultural competence. So what are some of those things that we can think about from a personal level that we can do ourselves to develop our own global competence that we can take back into classrooms or into other settings with us? So to get us started, we need to talk about the term global competence. So what I like to do for descriptive words like this is have you think about who would be a globally competent person in your mind. So when I think of these abstract things, sometimes it helps me to think of a role model of what it would be. So take a moment and just jot down a person, if you have pencil and paper nearby, who comes to your mind when you think of global competence. And think about why it is that you chose this person. So I want you to think about that person, but most importantly, think about the descriptor words you thought of to describe them as we move through this presentation tonight. So at the end, if you're willing to share who you selected as your globally competent person in the beginning of this, I'd really be interested to hear your examples. So keep that person and those descriptors in mind. So what is global competence? The definition of global competence is it's dynamic and it's fuzzy and it's sometimes a little bit nebulous. And if you read the literature out there on global competence, you'll discover pretty quickly that no two people really define it in precisely the same way. So it gets a little bit fuzzy. So the Asia Society and the Council of Chief State School Officers defined global competence as the capacity and disposition to understand and act on issues of global significance. And then the Longview Foundation adds to this, it's a body of knowledge about world regions, cultures, and global issues, and the skills and dispositions to engage responsibly and effectively in a global environment. So if we boil everything down from all the various definitions that are out there, we typically are left with kind of this core here, that global competency is a set of knowledge, its skills, and dispositions that are needed to work and live in a global society. So what is this, or what could this look like in action? And David Young from VIF International Education proposes that these are the key features that would be present. So an appreciation of culture. So a globally competent person would see their own culture and see its strengths. They would also seek to understand the cultures of others. They're aware of the similarities and differences among cultures, and they understand behaviors and values are often tied to cultures. So they have this deep understanding of what culture is and where they are situated in culture. There's evaluation of information. So globally competent people regularly question easily accessible information to look for deeper understandings and thoughtfully evaluate materials and perspectives rather than just accepting things at face value. Cross-cultural communication. So globally competent people effectively exchange ideas with peers from different backgrounds, either virtually or in person, and they have the skills to enter new communities and new spaces. There's perspective-taking skills. So globally competent people demonstrate curiosity as well as empathy and tolerance and respect, and show compassion for the perspective of others. There's also intelligent humility. So the globally competent person understands that their knowledge is not complete, that they don't know everything, and they appreciate how much more there is to learn about the world. There's also divergent thinking. So in this sense, the globally competent person sees alternatives or new solutions to existing problems and can envision the world differently from how it currently exists. And then he also adds technological literacy to this list. So the globally competent person utilizes and explores technologies to communicate and to collaborate with others and to learn to share new ideas and information. So this is a list of skills that educating for global competence, preparing our youth to engage the world, which I believe you've read. They put together, and it suggests what a globally competent graduate would have. And I think we can extrapolate that to skills we want to look at within ourselves as globally competent teachers as well. So something I want to highlight within this is the 4 self items in the middle. So self-reliance, self-confidence, self-control, and self-knowledge. We're going to circle back to this idea of self in just a moment, but I wanted to just point the idea of self out specifically, so you can keep that in the back of your mind for the moment. I also really appreciate the addition of sense of humor to this list. And I can say personally from my experiences in cross-cultural situations, I really think this is something that's been very powerful for me. So what I'd like you to do is take a moment, look over this list, and have a think about this. So where do you see your areas of strength right now in this, if you were self-assessing? And what areas do you see that you might like to develop further moving forward? So I'll give you just a moment to look at that list just a bit further. So now that we've kind of started thinking about what global competence is, it's really important to think of why this is so important. And I'm guessing that if you're attending this webinar, you probably already think that global competence is something really important that we want to develop in ourselves and in our students. And I think this excerpt from the Global Education for a Global Age really helps articulate the importance of and the need for global competence. And they say, this is the great challenge facing America at the beginning of a new millennium, to give its citizens a thorough understanding of the world and at its cross currents to help them see what others value and believe. So right now, we are recasting our understanding of economics, of communication, of security, cultural identity, citizenship, the environment. So think of globalization, the digital revolution, mass migration, climate instability. So all of these things are really triggering new concerns, and these things are demanding a new way for us to think about how we respond and interact with the world as a whole. So there are a number of other factors that I think we need to think about here. So according to the National Education Association, economies are becoming more interdependent. So the US economy, for example, is more globally connected than ever. So today, 1 in 5 jobs in this country is tied to international trade, and this trend is expected to continue. We'll see how that unfolds in the next term of presidential politics in this country, so maybe I shouldn't comment on that quite yet. American society is right now more diverse. So we are becoming more linguistically and culturally diverse, and we're at a point in our population now where in schools the majority is now in the minority. So global challenges are becoming more complex. There's increasing global challenges such as Zika, natural disasters, global warming, poverty, refugees, and all of these things necessitate a coordinated global response. Global competence enhances overall academic achievement, so students need to acquire global competence through study of things like language and global systems and international or intercultural competence in order to really develop into the type of leaders that are going to be developing. So within this, let's think of 21st century skills. So we need to think about preparing students for these skills so that they understand global systems and global issues, so that they understand the dynamics of how things are interconnected in the world, and so that they understand and develop ideas as to how society can address these global issues. So I don't want to suggest that developing global competence is easy or that it is hard. Instead, I think it's useful that we think about it as an individual journey, and that we all have different paths leading us to where we are now. And for each of us to move forward, we have to think very critically about ourselves at a really deep level. And I think it sounds both maybe logical and counterintuitive at the same time to say that building global competence starts with taking the time to really get to know yourself as a person. So there's that focus inward before we can more successfully look outward. So for our purposes here, I'm going to briefly talk about 3 things from a personal level of developing global competence. And those are knowing yourself, understanding perspective, and developing increased awareness. Okay, so at the core, we need to be able to understand who we are ourselves and to know our identities so that we are able to see how our identities shape our perception of others and of the world around us, for that matter. So think about who you are. What do you consider to be the most important aspects of your identity? What groups do you belong to? To help us think about ourselves, I want to offer you an activity that you can try on your own, or if you've got paper and pencil beside you right now and you're a fast drawer, please feel free to do this right now. But these are called cultural stars or cultural flowers, and they're a reflective tool to think about yourself. So if you'd like to try this, draw a flower and think about yourself. On the petals, what you need to do is write down the things about you and your identity that you think are really important to shape who you are. So you may want to consider things like age or race, physical ability, sexuality, languages that you speak, ethnicity, family structure, social role, employment role, education. Any of those things that can really define how you see yourself. So on the next step, what I would like you to do is take those petals and expand the petal outward. And in the next space, write about how that aspect you've chosen about your identity shapes who you are. For instance, I focused on one petal here, the oldest child. So in my case, I think being the oldest child in my family made me a leader and made me a decision maker. Okay, so now I'm going to take that petal and make it one layer further. So once I've expanded the petal this time, what you need to do is write about any misconceptions or stereotypes people may have of you because of that aspect of your identity. So in this case, there's a perception maybe being the oldest child of being bossy or always having to be right. So if you look at all those different aspects of your identity and you pull the layers out to say not only what that aspect of your identity is, but also how you think it defines you, and then how others see you because of it, gives us a really nice chance to reflect on ourselves and think about what those aspects are that are important to us and consider how they shape who we are and how others might see us. Okay. So the second aspect of developing global competence I want to talk about tonight is understanding perspective. So perspective is the way in which we view the world through different lenses. So we select our lenses based on our identity. So think about all those things that you would have written on your cultural flower. But developing global competence and intercultural competence, for that matter, means developing our ability to see and understand situations through lenses outside of our own. So I'll give you a moment to read this. I really like this comic to think about perspective. I think it's a really poignant reminder of what people can do, impose their own worldviews and values on others. This can often lead to misinterpretation, misunderstanding, misconception. So cultural misconceptions are really common roadblocks to bridging the cultural divide and developing our own cultural competence. Another important aspect of perspective is thinking about the other. So some of you may have read this, but if you have, bear with me. So I'm going to read this story to you so we don't have awkward silence while I'm, guess how long it takes everyone, since I can't see you. So I'll read this out loud to you. And what I want you to do as I'm reading this is think about the tribe that I'm going to describe to you throughout this passage. In a 1956 edition of American Anthropologist, an article by Horace Minor, Body Ritual Among the Nasarima, describes the magical beliefs and practices of a tribe supposedly observed by Minor in great detail and expresses concern about several of the group's slightly masochistic tendencies. Some of the Nasarima custom include scraping and lacerating the face or legs with a sharp instrument, piercing the skin with sharp instruments and then taking great care to keep those holes from closing again, painting the body and inserting ritualistically, moving a bundle of hog hairs in the mouth several times a day. The people of this tribe seek the assistance of medicine men many times during the course of a year to treat physical ailments, release them from the power of devils that have lodged in their heads, and gouge holes in their teeth. This last is done in the hopes of avoiding oral decay and offending one's friends. The Nasarima gather in large numbers to watch clans within the tribe enact small battles, often with many physical injuries, and observe individual tribal members fight to unconsciousness. All right, so take a few moments now, and I want you to think, where do you think the Nasarima live? And after you've done that, think of 5 adjectives that you would use to describe this tribe's customs. So, and as you're writing those, how many of those are positive and how many of those are negative? And if you were a teacher, how would you deal with the Nasarima children in your classroom who insisted on maintaining their tribal customs?
So feel free, this is Caitlin hopping in here. For those of you who are on the chat, feel free to answer the questions in the chat if you'd like.
Okay. And I'll pause just a moment. I can't see the chat right now, Caitlin, so if you let me know if some answers are popping in and when to move forward.
I will do that, thank you. Mm-hmm. So just thinking of the questions that have been posted here, we'll give you a moment or two to think about the answers to some of these questions.
I feel like I should have music playing in the background now.
Yes. Well, it's a an age-old teacher strategy of wait time.
Yes. Don't be afraid of the silence.
That's right. We have some folks chatting on the chat, but they're not answering our question just yet. We did also have some people who had said that they were having a difficult time seeing the slides. And also sometimes we have a short delay between what people see and what we're presenting. We have not gotten any responses yet. Again, I'm happy to engage with our wait time, or people can also just write their own answers to the questions. I have a theory, but I'm not going to say it, but I am curious.
Okay. So for those who are listening to this later on, if you have your notes on the side and you're thinking about where you think this tribe lives and what descriptor word to use, and really be thoughtful and use your gut reaction. How many words that you use were positive and how many were negative? So the next thing I'm going to ask you to do is to think about the Nasamaria and what does it spell backwards? And the answer is, of course, at this point, American. So this is an exercise that I have to admit, the first time that I did this, I was completely caught, and I didn't realize that what had been done was to make the familiar seem foreign. And it's a really helpful thing to do in thinking about perspective and thinking about the lenses that we use to view the others and the way we describe others who are different from ourselves, and how even our word choice in those perspectives really can have a huge impact on how we view things and how we view the other and what our opinion is going to be at that point. So it's kind of a really powerful exercise to think about positions from the other. So this kind of leads us very closely into the next area, which is awareness. And it ties closely to perspective in a number of ways in terms of thinking about lenses that we use to view others. So when we're talking about awareness in global competence, we're thinking about having the understanding that there are multiple ways of doing things and of living. So understanding that there are cultural norms that dictate the differences in the way we do things and we see the world. And also acknowledging that there's no one way to necessarily be right or to see the world or to do things in the world. Okay. So what I'd like to do is I'm going to show you a very short video on traffic in Hanoi. And as you're watching this, just jot down or keep in mind what are your reactions to watching this traffic scene. So hopefully there's not a delay here. comes the big bus. How's it gonna get through? It's gonna power its way through. Oh goodness. Oh, slowly making it. Yay! All right, so thinking about the traffic, what was your reaction? So did you see chaos? Did you feel like there were no traffic rules? Did you feel like there was no awareness of what was going on and no attention to safety? Or did you see collaboration with horns used to signal? Did you see no road rage? Did you see the role of each driver to allow others to enter and exit the complicated traffic pattern? So think about which perspective you reacted to the traffic with. And I'm going to ask you to watch it one more time. And whatever perspective you chose the first time, that initial reaction, this time watch it from the opposite perspective. How's it gonna get through? It's gonna power its way through. Oh goodness. Oh, slowly making it. Yay! I have to say, I always appreciate the women cheering at the end. This is one of those things as well that it's very useful for us to think about ourselves and our reactions and the images that we react towards. When we're able to reflect on those, it's really the first step in helping us develop back to that list that we were looking at earlier on what some of those features of a globally competent person is, and seeing that through this self-reflection of understanding our identity and being aware of our lenses and being aware of others helps us develop into those things more powerfully. So one of the things that Caitlin had asked me to do was to suggest some resources that you might be interested in looking at if you would like to do a little further digging into this. So I've compiled a number of different websites that you might like to go to if you have some time to look through, and I'll kind of talk to you briefly about what each one is, and if you're interested, you can certainly dig further. So the first one is the AFS Teacher Tool Box, and this is an American field service. So this toolbox provides lesson plans related to several topics like human rights and cultural studies and global awareness. Social activism and intercultural learning is on there as well. So they have a nice array of lesson plans if that's something that you're teaching in your classroom or you would like some extra input on. The next one is called Culture Trek Classroom Connections, and it's an e-learning resource. It's great in terms of reflecting on your own cultural experiences and helping you kind of develop those intercultural skills. We have the Center for International Education. This is an interesting site for your own reading. They have what's called the 21st Century Imperative. And if you want to go through and read this, they make the case that US global competence in the 21st century is not a luxury, it's a necessity. So whether engaging the world or culturally diverse areas of the country, which is almost everywhere now, global competence it's vitally important. Global competence must become part of the core mission of education from K to 12 or K to 20. The next one is the Global Education Conference Network. The Global Education Conferences is a collaborative worldwide community initiative with students and educators and various organizations. And it's designed to increase opportunities for building education-related connections around the globe while supporting cultural awareness and recognition of diversity. So the conferences aim to present ideas and examples and projects related to connecting educators and classrooms with a strong emphasis on promoting global awareness and fostering global competency. And
April, this is Caitlin jumping in. Isn't the Global Education Conference going on this week?
It is.
Going on right now for International Education Week, and it's 24/7. It's all online. So for any educator, anyone who is joining us tonight, I recommend that you do. It's free and it's accessible. If you can join this training, you can definitely join the Global Education. Yeah.
Absolutely. Okay. And then we do have global teacher education. So GTE's mission is to ensure U.S. teachers are trained to prepare young people to cope and thrive in a globally connected world. And they support internationalization of teacher preparation programs by connecting professionals. And they have resources that address pedagogy, best practices, learning challenges, and teacher development. So they have a nice, robust website that I'm sure Caitlin can tell you quite a bit about. And I do have several pages right after this that are references that I use throughout this and further reading. And I think what might be easiest is to say that if you're interested in all the references, I am more than happy to email this to you. I don't know, Caitlin, if you can make this available to everyone beyond.
Absolutely. Yep. We're happy to share whatever. And actually some of our viewers said they were having a difficult time seeing some of the pictures. So if you would be willing to share, we have the capacity to share it if you're willing.
Absolutely. Yeah, I'm more than happy to just send you, well, I think you have the PowerPoint there, so you can share this out with anybody. And it has all the links in it, and including 4 more pages of, well, articles and blogs, books, programs, and websites that you might be interested in, with all the links in there. But what I wanted to do right now is, I know I don't have a lot of time to keep going here, but I did want to say that global competence, this is such an important task that you're undertaking, and I applaud you for this. I think it is one of the most important things that you could possibly do to really help develop a really positive future for the children with whom you are working. And it's just such a necessary skill for a connected world. And I think given the tone and tenor of the election process that we just went through, I think it's more important than ever that we take the time and effort to focus on developing global competence and helping our students develop it in their process of becoming lifelong learners.
Absolutely fantastic. Thank you so much, April. That list of resources is invaluable, and we greatly appreciate you taking the time to develop those resources, and especially for sharing them with us and taking the time to do that. So thank you so much. So what we would like to do now is turn it over to our viewers. This is your opportunity to ask questions about anything that April has covered, or maybe specific questions about global competence. As you know, April did use a lot of the readings that were assigned for this week. So also, if there are any specific questions from the readings that you might have as well, you're welcome to ask those. April is an amazing resource. As we're waiting for questions to come in, April, I had a question for you. You said that that global competence is a journey. I certainly agree with you on that. Could you give just tell us a little bit about your journey? You were a classroom educator. Now you're teaching future teachers, and you understand the value of global competence. And I, knowing you professionally, believe you to be a globally competent person, and you advocate for this so well. So tell us about your journey of global competence and how your first transformative experience when you realized that global competence was important, and then when you realized that how to bring that into your classroom practice, and then to bring that to future teachers.
Sure. So, the Reader's Digest version. So I'm actually a Navy brat, and my family grew up moving from place to place, and I think that started kind of shaping my idea of how to interact with people. And as a very young child, I had to learn how to make friends, and I don't think I really I never really thought deeply about these things. But when I was in high school, my family started hosting foreign exchange students. And over the years, they've hosted 18 now. They kept going after I graduated, obviously. I didn't take 18 years to go through high school. But we had so many exchange students come into our home, and they really became like my brothers and sisters. And I think even at that time, I was starting to kind of understand like perspectives outside my own, but I wasn't very critical with it. And I don't think I was very critical with it until much later in my life. And I worked for the World Affairs Council as an intern in Pittsburgh, and they had me work on some educational programming for children. And I started realizing that, wow, this can be really transformative, and this has such an impact. And it had such an impact on me that I actually went back and I got my master's in teaching, and I ended up overseas. And I think it was really my students who made me more aware of the power of global competence. And I'm just, I think of the students who came into my classroom from countries where they weren't supposed to get along, and how through empathy, tolerance, and respect in the classroom, we developed into this community of learners. And it was all of a sudden that we were this community, and these things, they made us special, and they were very important, our differences, but we also had these commonalities that we could really build. And I really think it was my students who kind of helped me understand the importance of global competence.
Excellent. Thank you so much. We have our first question coming in outside of me, the question that I asked, coming in from Kennedy Schultz. She's asking, can you give some practical advice on developing or adapting curriculum to insert global competence practices into the classroom? And this is a crucial question, so I'm so glad you asked this question, because we all have, as educators, our requirements that we have to fulfill in terms of curriculum, expectations, often testing. So how is it that amidst all of these outside expectations, we can infuse global competence into our curriculum? And it did say practical advice, so some practical examples as well, please.
Sure. So I think there are a number of things, and we have so much that we have to fit in the very short time that we have in the classroom every day, and it's really hard to fit things in. So finding space where we can do this is really important. And so for me, some of the things I like to do is coming up with classroom contracts. So having a discussion with the class about what it means to be a good citizen or a global citizen, or whatever it is that you want to focus on in this. So develop your classroom definition of what a globally competent person is, and have a classroom contract. And this is something that you can refer to throughout the day. So what elements are you seeing? So, we're working on opening perspective. So how are we going to do that through our social studies lesson today? Or when we're reading this book in our literature class today, how are we going to think about perspective outside of our own and think about who the other is? And I think some of those things are really important. Something that, and this is just because this is my great passion, is children's literature. Something that I love to do, and I know some people feel that they can't fit this in, but I promise you it is doable, is using children's literature regardless of the age group that you teach, to bring in some of these tough concepts to think about and to be reflective upon. And they can be used across the curriculum, and just at those teachable moments, to have children's literature to talk about some of these issues, and then let the students go from there to build their own stories, to explore their own stories, to think about maybe visible thinking routines from Project Zero are another nice way that I find really helps teachers find space for students to be reflective on these things. And I think for me, when I talk with some of the teachers that I work with about this, it seems overwhelming because it's very big picture. And I think if we take those small chunks and you find 5 minutes to talk about global competence in relation to whatever it is that you're doing through a classroom contract, or through referring back to that and thinking about how that can come into your lesson. So you're teaching economics. Well, let's talk about globalization within that. If you're teaching social studies to third graders, building in these moments within the lesson, I think is very doable. So don't think of this as this one overarching big thing that you have to do every day, but think of it as like those little tiny steps that you can build in. And those little tiny steps, I mean, it's like all those drops of water in a bucket, they really add up immensely over time.
Mm-hmm. One example when I was a classroom teacher, April, is we did use literature a lot. And when I was a kindergarten teacher, we had a unit on stories, and we would teach about sort of, I guess we would call them fairy tales. And so I started really small. We had Little Red Riding Hood, and we read Little Red Riding Hood stories from 5 countries, the equivalent of these Little Red Riding. And it was a little thing that we did, and it gave the kids a different perspective on this same story. And that was just something small that we did. And then they rewrote it themselves from their own perspective. So again, it's that idea of taking those little things, this little tiny thing we were already doing, and plugging in that extra cultural perspective. And it was something we just did one day, and then it kind of grew from there.
Right. And the Cinderella story is another good one to use in that, because there's a Cinderella story in almost every culture that you can find and draw from, and be able to read those different stories in the same way that you did that.
Mm-hmm. Excellent. So we had a couple of questions that came in specifically about the certificate program. So I'll answer those very briefly, but I would like, this is an opportunity for folks to ask questions to our guest speaker as well, because this is a nice opportunity to ask really specific questions of Dr. Maddox Foster as well. So one question that someone would like to know more about the certificate, I recommend going to our website, peacecorps.gov/educators, and looking at the resource page. And immediately following the webinar, there will be an email that will go out that will share all the different links to all the different pages, and that will talk more specifically. But again, if you complete the assignments for all 4 of the different modules, you will get a certificate. Someone asked if it's an accredited education institution. Unfortunately, we are not, but it will come from Peace Corps. So that we don't provide any accreditation. That we do a lot of work currently in 63 different countries, where we sometimes provide certificates of varying things, but this is not an accreditation. It's just a certificate to say that you completed it. The intention is for classroom teachers or educators who want to get continuing education units. There was also a question about collaborating with organizations to develop global competence. Again, if you watch the first part of this video, we do offer resources to educators. We connect them with current volunteers and return volunteers to do intercultural exchanges with our volunteers and their counterparts and community members in other countries. We also have a question that just came in from Gilmara Johnson. Gilmara is, she said one of the pre-work readings, is a link from Learn North Carolina Global Competency. And she says there are lesson plans under each element of the videos, and they're very helpful. And thank you very much, Gilmara, for pointing that out. That's one of the reasons that we selected that as one of the resources and assignments. They do have examples. I also recommend going to the University of San Diego. They also have lessons and videos of teachers who are trying to incorporate global content into their classrooms. April, can you also cite some other really specific and practical websites where teachers can go and see this in action, or people actually doing this in the classroom? You had gone through some of those websites that you had shared before, but something that really sticks out for you is, I'm a teacher, I need to do this today, I'm a math teacher, where can I go?
The first thing I would do is I would actually log on to the global education conference that's going on this week, because so many of those things have just immediate practical value that you can take back into your classroom immediately. And there are some really powerful and short examples of things that you can take back into your classroom. There's something else, and as an elementary person, I don't want to feel like I'm neglecting the high school people out there, but at Stanford University, there's a program called SPICE, and it's a really interesting, Caitlin, I'll send you the link to it so you can add it to this. It's a really interesting program that they have going on where they're actually looking at textbooks from various countries and looking at the way different things in social studies are presented. So imagine take an issue from World War II and how is it presented in different books, and thinking about our language and our perspective and how that is impacting the message that is going to students and what we're teaching them. And so it's a really powerful website that, especially if you're a high school teacher, that you may like to check out as well.
Excellent. Thank you so much. Kirsten Albert posed another question. And please, we've put up the slide. If you have questions and answers, you can also tweet them if you're having difficulty with the chat. We're also monitoring the WWS info emails if you want to email us a question if you're not comfortable using those channels. Kirsten had posed the question, in this age of social media and student access to online information, do you have some resources that you would recommend for high school students to connect with global competence issues? And I have an idea, but let me turn that first over to you, April, just to give some thoughts on that. But I do have a couple of recommendations as well.
Okay, well, the first one that pops into my mind, and then I'll turn it over to you, is iEarn. It's the International Education Resource Network. So they use social networks to connect schools and youth organizations to engage in global issues, and that might be a really good one for high school students.
Also, I do see we have a lot of educators and some organizations joining us here. If you have a resource that you can share with the educators, please feel free. Unfortunately, Google Hangouts will not allow you to put a link into the chat. So you have to just type the name of the resource, and then the viewers out there have to Google it or to use a search engine to find it. Another resource that I would recommend to answer Kirsten's question is, or one thing I would like to talk about is the Stevens Initiative. When Chris Stevens when he was killed, when he was serving as ambassador, his family, he was a Peace Corps volunteer, and his family was fiercely dedicated to continuing his idea of intercultural competence and global competence in the interest of promoting world peace, which is Peace Corps' mission. And he lived that mission from when he was a Peace Corps volunteer on through his life as a very successful diplomat. So his family is currently, in his legacy, has created the Stevens Foundation to fund virtual exchange, so to facilitate this kind of intercultural exchange, and often free or low cost to educators. So I would recommend going to the Stevens Initiative website. It's being facilitated by the Aspen Institute. And again, we can share these resources via the website for the course. And Peace Corps is actually a recipient of one of those grants to help to facilitate intercultural exchanges through our Peace Corps volunteers and return volunteers. But there are lots of other organizations, iEarn actually is one of them, that is helping to, they're funding. And if there is a school or an education institution out there or a nonprofit that is viewing this webinar, they have their most recent RFP or request for proposals out for people who are interested in getting funding for virtual exchange. So, but also, there's a lot of different ways to engage through social media with people from other countries in a safe, obviously, as educators, we know that's really important way, but do think about how to use, and a lot of, through our Rural Wise Schools program, our educators do really incredible things with volunteers. We have volunteers who have a really great example that I have very recently, a volunteer in Thailand in a school in Alaska, and they call it the Alaska-Thailand Connection. And they actually have kids writing blogs to each other. So they have they use a regular blogging platform. The kids will go in and ask questions. Well, they'll answer questions from the previous post, and then they ask their own questions, and then they swap. So the kids in Thailand will answer questions and then pose questions to the kids in Alaska. The kids in Alaska will answer those questions and ask the other ones. And it's a great resource I recommend. But those are the kinds of connections that we can help to facilitate using social media through our program as well. So I do recommend looking at our website and connecting with a volunteer overseas. We have another question, April, coming in. Carolina is asking, Oh, she's shared a resource. Thank you, Carolina, so much. I was really hoping that some of our educators out there can share. If you used a tool or you find something really useful, especially free. I mean, I was a teacher, I get it, especially if you don't have support from your administrators. And even if you do, sometimes you don't have the resources that you'd like to have. So she has shared those resources. Thank you so much for that. So please do take a look at the resources that she has shared. So we have only a few more minutes. Time is flying. I'm very passionate about this, as you can probably tell, and April is as well. But if anyone else has any questions, I do know, April, in our past conversations, if you can recommend your favorite activity. Something you had talked about literature. I know you've talked about, we've had long conversations in the past about activities to help to integrate this idea of students with different perspectives in the classroom and how you might incorporate that. So,
my favorite activity? Are you asking for people to come in with their favorite activity or for mine?
Well, certainly our educators, but I would like you to share just a brief activity that you've done in the past that you think has really helped students to understand that people see the world from different lenses, including themselves. This is putting you on the spot.
Sure. Trying to think of a brief one. Something I've liked to do at all different grade levels, and I'll choose this one because I think you can do it anywhere from K to 12 or K to 20. And they're just painted reflections. And what I used to do in my classrooms is I kept just plain notebooks. And anytime that we would do we'd have a lesson on something, or something would happen in the class that we needed to have a deep conversation about before we actually really started discussing it. What I had the students do is they did an abstract painting in this painted reflection book. And so they would think about the topic and they would paint what they felt. And then they would kind of write a few sentences to encapsulate what they were thinking. And from there, we started the dialogue and the discussion, because I found when I gave them that time to kind of express themselves outside of the box and kind of reflect on it, I was getting much deeper reactions and reflections from the students, and the dialogue was just that much richer. And I don't know if that's one of my favorite things that I did. And I think I chose that example because it can span, anybody can do it. I've done it with kindergartners and I've done it with high school seniors, but it really gives that space for people to kind of internally reflect and then be able to express some of that more powerfully.
Excellent. I wish we had time for more questions. It always seems like that's the case, but please, we are happy to extend the dialogue again through Twitter. This will be on our website. You can also, this will live on YouTube as well. You can post questions or comments on the YouTube page where this video will be living after the broadcast is over. We cannot thank you enough. Thank you so much, Dr. Maddox Foster, for joining us this evening on your own time, very late at night, when you have classes to teach and your own commitments. And to all of our educators who are out there and who are working in the education space, whether it's in a classroom or supporting educators, we greatly appreciate the work that you do. Without you, the world wouldn't be possible, and certainly my work would be impossible. And we thank you so much for your interest in this, and just in wanting to help to develop the next generation of globally competent and world savvy citizens. And we've had a lot of thank yous coming in on the chat. Thank you, all of our viewers. Again, you're the ones who make this possible. April, any closing remarks?
I just want to say the work that you're doing is so important, and I really and truly applaud you for taking the time and effort to learn more about this. And it really speaks volumes to who you are as educators and what you want to do for the students in your classrooms.
All right, excellent. Thank you all. Thank you so much. Good night and have a great night. And we'll have our next Global Competence webinar, part 2, module 2, is January 9th, which is a Monday. We've changed the day in case this Wednesday was inconvenient, from 8 to 9 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. And again, all of that information will be coming out in an email very shortly after this broadcast is over. Thanks again. Good night. Thanks for all the work that you do.